The usual tranquility of Norman Street in Seattle was abruptly interrupted by the urgent sound of sirens. Within minutes, dozens of police cars arrived and surrounded house number 7. However, when they finally managed to enter the residence, they were shocked by what they saw there. Morgan, a police officer, had just started her shift when she was surprised by an alarm call. On the other end of the line, a trembling and desperate female voice reported what had happened. "I heard desperate screams and the incessant crying of a child coming from my new neighbor's house," the woman explained, clearly distressed. "The strange thing is that he lives alone. He has no children or wife. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid something very bad might have happened in there." It was a cool autumn morning when a moving truck pulled up in front of house number 7 on Norman Street in Seattle, United States. The neighborhood, always on the lookout for new arrivals, watched curiously as a man of medium height and brown hair unloaded boxes and furniture with the help of movers. The house, which had been empty for months, soon began to come to life, although the thick velvet curtains never opened, not even during the day. This only fueled the murmurs among the neighbors, who wondered who the new resident could be. The man moved with silent, methodical efficiency, directing the porters with brief gestures and economical words. The precision of his movements and the way he avoided direct gaze only intensified the mystery surrounding his figure. Among the spectators was Cecilia, a white-haired, shrewd-eyed lady who lived 2 houses away. As she watered the flowers in her garden, she kept her eyes on her new neighbor. "This young man is very reserved, isn't he?" she commented aloud, more to herself than to anyone in particular. Tom, who was on the other side of the fence mowing the lawn, heard Cecilia's comment and looked over his shoulder. "Yeah, I thought so too. I haven't heard anyone say hello yet," he replied, turning off the lawnmower to take a break. Cecilia shrugged, still looking at the house with a curious expression. "Well, he must have his reasons for being so reserved. I hope it's just shyness." As they spoke, the man continued his task. As he lifted a particularly heavy box, he paused to wipe his forehead with his arm, revealing for a moment a thoughtful look, which quickly hid when he noticed his neighbor's interest. Little by little, personal items such as books, paintings, and an old typewriter were brought inside, each adding layers to the man's enigmatic personality. As the day wore on, the house, with its thick velvet curtains that never opened, began to take on signs of life. Lights flickered on and off, and sometimes the man's silhouette could be seen passing behind the closed curtains. The neighbors' curiosity grew with each unpacked box, and each curtain that remained closed fueled even more speculation and murmurs about who the new inhabitant of Norman Street could be. That night, while the neighborhood slept, a disturbing sound broke the usual silence of the street. They were muffled screams, as of someone crying desperately. The sound came from the mysterious man's house, echoing subtly through the walls closed by velvet curtains. The next day, conversations about the new neighbor took on a more urgent and speculative tone. "Did you hear the screams last night?" one neighbor asked another as they picked up the mail. "Yes, it was scary. It sounded like a child crying. The strange thing is that yesterday I didn't see any children or women entering the house." "Yeah, it's really strange. But I don't know. Sometimes the wife and daughter arrived at a time we didn't see. It could just be his daughter crying for some reason," the other neighbor commented, trying to keep a balanced perspective. As the community whispered and theorized, the tension only grew. In the days that followed that disturbing night of weeping, Norman Street was enveloped in a pall of eerie calm. The man, whose presence had already been a source of curiosity and now of concern, seemed more reclusive than ever. The curtains remained implacably drawn, and except for the rare times when the front door opened for the residents' quick entry or exit, there were no signs of life. In the mornings, when the neighborhood was usually bustling with activity as people headed to work or took their children to school, house number 7 remained dark and silent. Occasionally, the man could be seen leaving the house quickly, his head lowered and covered by a hood, avoiding any visual contact with the neighbors. His return was equally discreet, always carrying some kind of bag or backpack. The neighbors, especially Cecilia and Tom, exchange observations and theories throughout the day. "I haven't seen any grocery deliveries or visitors since he arrived," Cecilia commented as she pruned her roses, her eyes fixed on the man's window whenever she ventured outside. Tom, as he swept leaves from his sidewalk, agreed. "It's true, he's very strange. And have you noticed? No lights at night, except for a faint glow coming from what appears to be his office. It's as if he wants to avoid being noticed." The rumors began to grow, fueled by the absence of any noise coming from the house. There were no more screams, no more laughter, no more conversations. It was as if the walls had swallowed up any sound that might escape from there. On one of those quiet afternoons, a new conversation began in Cecilia's garden. She and a neighbor, Linda, who lived across the street, were quietly discussing the possibility that something was wrong. "Do you think we should do something?" Linda asked worriedly as she looked at the closed house. Cecilia sighed. "I don't know, Linda. It's complicated. What if he was just a reserved man?" "Maybe. But do you remember that night when we heard a child crying inside? Did you see any children leaving the house?" Their conversation was interrupted when a soccer ball rolled to Cecilia's feet, brought by Linda's youngest son, who was running after her. Their worries were momentarily forgotten as the child laughed, bringing a brief moment of normalcy to the attention that had gathered among the adults. When the boy walked away, they continued. "No, until the day I've only seen the man going in and out of there, no one else. I'm going to go there and investigate." "Are you going over there?" "Are you crazy, Cecilia? We don't know who he is or if he's dangerous or not." "Don't worry, Linda. I know what I'm doing." Armed with an excuse to welcome her new neighbor, she walked up to the man's front door and rang the doorbell. After a few long seconds, the door opened just a crack, revealing a part of the man's dark face. "Good afternoon," Cecilia said, trying to keep her tone friendly. "I'm Cecilia, your neighbor from that house over there. I saw that you recently moved in, and I'd like to welcome you." "Oh, thank you," the man answered briefly, not opening for further discussion. "Is your wife here?" She tried to probe. No, I don't have a wife." "Oh yeah, sorry. So you're a single dad. Anyway, if you need a babysitter, I can recommend one." "No, I don't have children," he replied quickly, seeming eager to end the conversation. Cecilia noticed his haste, and a shiver ran down her spine. If he didn't have children, then what child was crying in the night? She wondered as she tried to probe through the crack in the door, hoping to catch any clues. "Oh no, I'm sorry. I thought I heard a child's noise in here. It must be the age. We start to hear things," she explained with a shy smile, trying to hide her attention, while the man looked at her seriously. "Well, if you need anything, we're here." The man simply nodded, and with a brief request for permission, said he needed to get back to his business, then closed the door. Cecilia left worried, with more questions than answers. The days that followed were spent observing and speculating about who that man was, what he was doing, and whose crying had come from during the first night. Next door, on a particularly quiet night, a little girl woke her mother, shaking with fear. "Mommy, I'm scared. There's someone crying inside my bedroom wall." The worried mother got up quickly and went to her daughter's room, putting her ear to the wall. She also heard the sound of crying, weak but persistent. Trying to calm her daughter, she suggested, "It must be the neighbor watching TV, dear. There's no need to be afraid. Try to sleep a little longer." But the mother spent the rest of the night awake, distressed by the intermittent sound that started and stopped without explanation. Was it really the television, or was there something else going on? As dawn broke, the crying stopped, and the street awoke to a disturbing silence. It was only when the news of the disappearance of little Annie Garrison appeared in the newspapers, describing the little 3-year-old girl who had disappeared while playing in her backyard, that the woman felt a shiver of suspicion. Though the crying had stopped, doubt now gnawed at her heart. My God, was that crying Annie? Had he done something to the girl? Trembling slightly, The woman immediately dialed the number for the local police, each ring seeming to echo in her turbulent mind. "We have interrupted the programming to give an urgent warning. Hey there, it's you who hasn't subscribed to the channel yet. What are you waiting for? It's quick, free, and will help us a lot. Click the button below right now and join our community." When the call was answered, she quickly tried to control her voice, which wavered between concern and fear. "Seattle Police, how can I help you?" The voice on the other end asked, calm and professional. "Hi, my name is Linda, and I need to report something." Linda began, her voice still shaking. "I live on Norman Street, and last night I heard crying coming from the house next door. A child's crying. Was there any suspicious activity beyond that?" The attendant asked, her voice urgent as she caught Linda's attention. "Yes, the man who lives there, he's very strange. He moved in recently, and he doesn't talk to anyone. He barely leaves the house. And what's even stranger is that no one has ever seen a child or a woman with him. So I'm worried about who the child is that's crying inside." Linda spoke quickly, the words tumbling over each other in her anxiety. "Ma'am, you mentioned that you heard a child crying from inside your neighbor's house, but that you never saw a child coming out of there. Is that right?" "Yes, and that's what worries me. I saw on the news today that a little girl named and went missing, and she's only 3 years old. The crying could be hers. I'm really worried that something terrible might be happening there. I understand, Mrs. Linda. We'll send a team out immediately to check it out. Can you give me the exact address, please? It is house number 7, Norman Street. Please come quickly. I have not heard any noise from that house since last night, and that worries me even more. We are sending a team right now, ma'am. Please stay safe and try to remain calm. If you notice any other suspicious activity while our team is on the way, please call back. Thank you so much," Linda said in a near whisper before hanging up the phone. She turned away from the window where she had been keeping watch and sat down, trying to calm her pounding heart. The wait for the police seemed like an eternity, each minute stretched out with fear and uncertainty. It wasn't long before several police cars were directed to the house, while Annie's family, warned that the girl had been found, waited anxiously for confirmation. Soon, the usual tranquility of Norman Street was shattered by the urgent sound of sirens. Within minutes, police cars arrived at house number 7, surrounding the property with efficiency and precision. Trained officers got out of their vehicles almost simultaneously, equipped with bulletproof vests and prepared for any situation. Neighbors, alerted by the sudden arrival of the police, began to emerge from their homes, gathering at a safe distance, but close enough to try to understand what was happening. Murmurs and speculations circulated rapidly among them as they watched the action with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "What could have happened?" asked a neighbor, nervously holding her young son's hand. "I don't know, but with all these police, it must be something serious." Another resident replied, trying to crane his neck to get a better look. Cecilia, who had been one of the first to notice the man's strange behavior, stood next to Linda, both watching intently as the officers set up a perimeter and began to approach the front door. Linda, still shaken by the call, quietly explained to Cecilia about the crying she had heard during the previous night and her suspicion that it might be little Annie. A police officer knocked firmly on the door of the house. "Seattle Police, open the door." After a few seconds of no response, he looked at the commander, who nodded. Using a tool, the officers broke down the door, quickly entering the residence. The man, who was quietly watching television in his room, was immediately handcuffed. "What's going on? I didn't do anything. Where's the child?" The man looked at the police officer, still trying to understand the situation as he was led into the living room. "Child, there is no child here. Please, you are confusing me." The tension was palpable, and the police cautiously advanced through the house, not knowing what they might find. The neighbors held their breath, each waiting and fearing what might be discovered. Outside, the minutes seemed to stretch on forever, the tension growing with each passing second without news. "Oh my God, I hope little Annie is okay," Cecilia murmured in fear. Finally, reaching the back of the house, the police found a door that was ajar. At a signal from his leader, one of the officers gently pushed open the door, revealing a dimly lit room. and what they saw there left everyone shocked. One of the officers stepped out, waving for the others to join him inside the house. The expressions on their faces were grave, but there was no immediate sign of violence or confrontation. Everyone on the street continued to watch, anxiously waiting for any information that might shed light on what was happening. Meanwhile, inside the house, the police officers faced a reality none of them had expected, preparing to clarify the situation not only for the concerned community of Norman Street, but for a family anxious for news of their missing daughter. The police officer leading the team lowered his gun, confused. Outside, the crying could be heard again, leaving the community with a mixture of concern and relief. Linda exclaimed, celebrating alongside Cecilia. However, what everyone didn't imagine was that there was no child there. The crying was nothing more than a parrot. Noticing the presence of strangers, the bird immediately began to reproduce the sound identical to a child crying, making that sound echo throughout the house. The officers looked at each other in disbelief, as tension quickly turned to relief and then to muffled laughter at the absurdity of the unexpected situation. The handcuffed man was released, still visibly shaken by the situation. He explained to the officer that his parrot had recently started imitating the sound after hearing it cry in a movie. "I never imagined this would happen, I'm sorry," he said, clearly embarrassed. The news that the screams were just from a parrot spread quickly. Linda, the neighbor who had filed the report, approached the man, offering an embarrassed apology. "I'm sorry for all the trouble. We were just concerned about the missing girl," she muttered. "I understand. I'm the one who owes an apology for my parrot. You did the right thing by calling the police. If it had been me hearing that sound from outside, I would have called them too," he replied with a sheepish smile. However, the distracted conversations and the buzz of the scene were abruptly cut off when one of the officers' radio crackled with urgent news. "Unit on Norman Street, this is Central. Miss Annie Garrison has been found. I repeat, Annie Garrison has been found." Officers immediately stopped as the officer on the radio responded. "Confirmed dispatch. Can you give us any more details?" "We received an update from Annie's mother that the girl was found inside her own home. It appears that she had gone to play hide and seek and had fallen asleep under the bed. The mother had searched every room and had not found the girl. Fortunately, she woke up and emerged from her hiding place on her own. Annie is safe and well." A relieved officer shared the news with his colleagues, who in turn related to the people gathered outside. A collective sigh of relief spread through the crowd. Smiles broke out, and the heavy air of worry quickly dissipated. Cecilia approached Linda, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Thank God she's okay. And what a relief to know it wasn't at all what we thought," she said as Linda felt her. His features relaxed after hours of tension. The episode taught an important lesson to the Norman Street community. Not everything we see or hear is really what we think it is. Comment below what you thought of this story and which city you are watching us from. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so that together we can build a huge community that shares inspiring stories. See you soon.